Hi everyone, Tish here and welcome back to my channel Auto Social UK. Now it has to be said that I've always quite liked an underdog, and when it comes to small crossovers we're spoilt for choice. But premium cars like the BMW X2 or the Audi Q2 have never quite done it for me. They offer a high price tag, but not much interior quality and certainly not much equipment, especially compared to the less premium rivals, things like the Ford Puma or the Volkswagen T-Cross. But those cars are also missing a bit of a flair which can be found in the DS3. This has always been one of my favourite small crossovers. It offers so much style and so much elegance. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you all the reasons why I think you should consider the DS3 as your next crossover. So if that sounds good, then please do keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So why aren't more people buying the DS3? And this was actually formerly the DS3 Crossback, and they had that Crossback at the end to stand it aside from the previous generation. But they've now ditched the Crossback, and this is the entry-level DS that you can get from the brand. I think that it has a lot to do with being linked to Citroën. DS has now been a separate brand from Citroën for quite a while, and of course it now shares a lot of parts with the rest of the Stellantis group. But the brand still finds it difficult to shake off Citroën, and that's what a lot of people think of. But I think they've come so far from those previous generations of cars. This looks brilliant. It looks really, really premium, and I think it's one of the best looking crossbacks that you can actually buy. Not many people seem to be buying DS. They actually only sold under 3,700 cars last year, despite releasing the DS4. So what's wrong? Why aren't people liking these cars? I'm not actually too sure of that answer. If you think you have an answer, please pop it in the comments down below. But I think it's a real shame. And where this car gets truly special is on the interior. No one quite does interiors like DS. It feels absolutely fabulous inside here, and it feels very high quality. In fact, if no one told me, I'd think that this is the higher spec model. But this is actually the entry-level DS line, and it feels super high quality. The DS line gets a sporty element, and that includes a leather-wrapped steering wheel, and you get the contrasting gold and red stitching. That gold and red stitching is also across here on the dashboard, and this dashboard is trimmed in Alcantara. It feels really high quality. Then to tie it all in, you also get these seats, which have the sort of coloured cloth on the interior, which is slightly rough feeling, but it's quite nice and it brightens up the cabin. You then have leather on the exterior, and you get that Alcantara down the centre. They feel really supportive as well. I love these seats. You also get a leather wrapped armrest which can slide backwards and forwards, although when you slide it forwards it does then get in the way of your second cup holder. The overall layout of the vehicle does feel slightly cramped. There isn't a feeling of space in this cabin, and that's a shame, but it does give you a slightly sportier feel to the drive. I really like the use of all the different tactile materials. You've got gloss black, you also get gloss black on your gear selectors, and then you have this kind of perforated metal which is trimmed down the centre console and on the steering wheel. I really like that. And also these buttons down the centre, which include your windows, your drive mode, and of course your start stop button, are physical buttons, and they feel really nice to press. But what is a shame is that they're not all physical buttons. When you move further up the car, these diamond sections here are actually haptic buttons, which is a bit of a shame. You do get the new generation of touchscreen, which is a 10.2 inch touchscreen, or 10 point something, I can't remember exactly which, and it's much easier to use than the previous generation screen, which is just as well, because of course everything is in that screen, including your climate control dials. You do also get a digital instrument cluster, but this feels considerably lower quality, and in fact this is where a little bit of Citroen has seemed to seep its way into the cabin. There's some real quirky elements as well, including when you open the door, one of the air vents actually stays attached to the door. Now, you haven't got to worry about electronics. It's not electrically wired in. Simply the air makes its way through the dashboard and through onto the door. But that does slightly worry me to wonder how much pressure can actually come out of this air vent. It also seems a little bit strange that they're still using the previous generation of Stellantis gear selector rather than the small scroller that you're now getting in the new generations of Peugeots and Vauxhalls. And for a moment, let's talk again about the exterior design of the DS3 and primarily what has changed for 2023. It's not actually all that much. The basic shape is still very much the same, from those bubbly headlamps to the shark fins on the rear doors, which are a nod to the original DS3 Super Mini, which I'll talk a bit more about when I jump in the back. But look closely and you will spot some changes. The brand has put most of its design attention to the front of the car. You've got a new grille design which wears the brand's new badge, and you've also got the new wing daytime running lights, which are very similar to the DS4. And though the overall car has a more subtle appearance compared to the DS4 or the DS7, I still think it makes the majority of rivals look dull in comparison. To complete the look, the SUV also introduces new alloy wheel designs, ranging from 17 to 18 inches. Otherwise, the changes largely depend on what trim level you choose, with basic performance line models getting black wheels and matching trim around the grille and door handles, as well as gloss black DS lettering on the tailgate. The more upmarket Opera and Rivoli cars, meanwhile, get more chrome garnishes. The rear of the car is much more subtle than the front, but I actually think it looks quite sporty. And I may be mistaken, but it feels a bit more hatchback than the previous generation. You have those elements of the dark badges, the DS and the DS badge, which give it that sporty element. You also have DS automobiles now spelled out across the tailgate. Now, the reasoning for adding automobiles may be because when you search DS3 online, it's actually difficult to find anything if you don't add automobiles. So the brand may have done this to get more brand awareness. Because this is the sportier DS line, you also get twin tailpipes, and I've been pleasantly surprised at what these sound like considering the small engine. Let me show you. Okay, it's not that impressive, but for a small petrol, you get my point. You can actually choose between two different engine setups. Both are petrols, but one is a smaller 101 brake horsepower, and this is paired together with a manual gearbox. It's only available actually on the lower spec model. If you want an automatic gearbox, then you automatically get a slightly more powerful engine, and that's a 131 brake horsepower unit, which is the one that I'm driving today. And actually, a bit like the sound from the exhaust, I've been pleasantly surprised by the amount of power that I've been getting out of this DS3. It feels quicker than the official 0 to 62 mile per hour sprint, which DS say takes around 9.2 seconds, which is reasonable for this class of car, but of course it's not that impressive when you think about performance cars. But actually, once you pop this car into sport mode, I'm really quite impressed. It's a lot more sprightly than I was expecting. Also, if you do go for the automatic, then it's an 8-speed automatic, which is pretty nice. Of course, it does hesitate from time to time, but most of the time, yeah, it performs really well. Of course, it's never going to be quite as sharp in its handling as the class-leading Ford Puma, but it feels pretty good. It responds well to your inputs, and because it isn't as heavy as the electric counterpart of the DS3 E-Tense, that means that it's slightly more nimble in the corners. Just in general, I really like the drive of this car. It's not quite as cushiony as the Citroens that we've become to know and love. It's slightly more sporty in its setup, and just in general, I think it's a slightly better all-rounder, which is a pleasant surprise and not something I was expecting. When it comes to the rear of the DS3, there definitely feels like there's some stubbornness from the designer. Because of course, as I mentioned, it has this shark fin on the rear window, which is a hark back to the previous generation DS. However, this has always been an issue. It's not one of those quirky, really nice design features that everyone loved. No. Everyone has always complained about it, even on the previous generation DS cars. It made the rear feel claustrophobic, and it was also in your blind spot. So to keep such a strange element that people have continuously complained about seems a little bit odd to me. Otherwise, it's quite comfortable in the back here. You have the same interior quality as the front, and that means that though you do have plastics down below, the seats are nice and comfortable and everything feels quite high quality. You don't get a pull-out armrest, which is a shame, but you do have two ISOFIX fitments back here. You also don't get any USB ports, but that's quite common in a car of this class. Style over substance is certainly something which springs to mind when talking about the boot of the DS3. Now, a bit like the Vauxhall Mocha, the boot release is really hard to find, and it's just here, just above the number plate. Now, inside the boot, you'll find 350 litres. That's smaller than the Audi Q2 or the Mini Countryman. In fact, it's very similar to the size of the boot on the Volkswagen Polo. So don't expect tons of space from this crossover because it's very similar to a standard hatchback. To me, the ultimate DS3 buyer would be somebody who's previously had a Mini Countryman but can no longer keep up with the rising cost of German cars. Just like the Mini Countryman, it offers a ton of style and personality. It may not be quite as practical as other rivals, with that space in the back being impeded by the doors and also the slightly small boot. But if you're not carrying people very often in your car and you mostly just want something that's stylish and rides a little bit higher, then I think the DS3 could be for you. Are you considering the DS3? Is there anything that puts you off? Let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know what other rivals are you considering alongside this car. If you have enjoyed this video, please do go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. Want to see more? Then you know what to do. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Until next time guys, see you later.